Most people don't realize how much their personal information is being bought and sold every day. Data brokers are making billions, pulling details about you from public records and the internet, and then packaging and selling it, usually without your consent. That's how your information lands in the hands of scammers, spammers, even stalkers. It's why you get endless robocalls and why ads seem to follow you everywhere. That's where Aura comes in. Aura actively removes your data from broker sites and keeps it off. They also instantly alert you if your information shows up in a breach or on the dark web. But Aura goes beyond data protection. With one app, you get a VPN, antivirus, password manager, spam call protection, dark web monitoring, and even up to $5 million in identity theft insurance, all backed by 24/7 US-based fraud support. Other companies might sell just credit monitoring or just a VPN. Aura gives you all of it, together, at the same price competitors charge for just one service. Start your free trial today at aura.com/remove. Protect yourself now at aura.com/remove.
Hi, I'm Case Lowe, co-host of the Open the Voice Gate podcast. The one question I'm constantly asked when it comes to Dragon Gate is, how do I get into the promotion? Well, stop asking and start listening to the Open the Voice Gate podcast, released every Wednesday on the Voices of Wrestling podcasting network. For exclusive news and show reviews, look no further than the leader in Dragon Gate coverage, Open the Voice Gate.
This podcast is a member of the Voices of Wrestling podcasting network. Visit voicesofwrestling.com to hear the rest of our great podcasts, as well as show reviews, columns, opinions, and updates across the world of wrestling.
Welcome back to Those Days, a Michinoku Pro retrospective. Episode 16, World Championship Title Series. Those Days is a production of Open the Voice Gate as a part of the Voices of Wrestling podcast network. You can find us on the Voices of Wrestling podcast feed or on our own dedicated Open the Voice Gate feed, wherever you get your podcasts. You can follow us on social media at Open Voice Gate. And if you'd like to donate to the show, click the link in the show notes. It'll take you to our redcircle.com landing site. You click the red box that says sponsor this podcasting and set up a one-time or reoccurring donation. No obligation whatsoever, but we would like to thank our previous donors. I'm one of your hosts. It's your old pal, Mike Spears, joined alongside your other host, Case Lowe. And Case, we ended this last episode with the Skydiving J Cup, or Skydiving J at Budokan Hall, and it was very clear, at least within the Japanese ecosystem, we were on a collision course to discover who the greatest junior heavyweight wrestler in Japan will be. And it's this has been a show that I think for most people who are even just mildly aware of Michinoku Pro and the career of great Sasuke, this show has a match that you would have circled in double underline. Case. It's time to talk about the J Crown Cup finals, but there's a bunch of other stuff to get to around that. How are you doing, bud?
I worry, it's so funny you did that intro, because I worry that maybe we're not going to shed enough light on the idea of Sasuke holding 9 titles at one time and maybe what that meant for Michinoku Pro. But there's a bunch of other stuff that we cover on this episode that, quite frankly, I just think it's way more interesting than that. And I'm not sure if that's just a result of being beaten over the head with the Ultimo Dragon 10 titles photo for the better part of 30 years now. I don't know what that is, but there's a lot of stuff that we're going to cover here that I'm way more excited about than the J Crown. And maybe that makes me bad at my job.
I don't know. I feel like that as the person on the project that came in with a lot less of a fluency and like a day-to-day Michinoku viewer and like studying, for me, the kind of in a lot of ways that this project has really like illustrated, like, then not just how much like the big beats are, but everything that's happening all around it. And really the story of this episode is what Michinoku Pro does around the J Crown tournament, and what wild idea that they kind of picked up from Liger. And that is, Case, we're going to talk about a whole lot of wild vanity titles throughout this episode, because that's what Michinoku was up to in July and August of 1996 while Sasuke was going and getting the 8 belts. Because and getting into it, I found it a lot more interesting than the actual J Crown final as well.
Yeah, I just think, well, this made me think about, not to jump into the middle of the episode, but just the place that Ultimo Dragon holds in all of this, and the weirdness of Ultimo Dragon. And I don't know, and I don't know if we could ever really get an honest answer out of him. And it's odd because he ends up spending so much time in the 2000s and beyond with Sasuke, with some of the Michinoku guys, and as those 90s juniors age, they sort of all banded together at various points in time. But we're not going to talk about Ultimo versus Shinjiro Otani, which happened the night before the Ultimo versus Great Sasuke match for the J Crown. But, that's one of the better junior matches of the 90s. And Ultimo Dragon is a man that it's not like he lacks truly great matches, but there is some sort of oddity of him wrestling within the Michinoku Pro ecosystem and wrestling these Michinoku Pro guys, where it doesn't feel like, for instance, when Jushin Thunder Liger steps into Michinoku Pro, or when he would later go into Osaka Pro or later go into Pro Wrestling Noah, there is, to me, a palpable tension between Ultimo and anything with the Michinoku Pro logo on it in the 90s that is just a very strange phenomenon.
Yeah, and we kind of get that in a full course with the J Crown final. And I'll save like my big, like, this was when we get into the J Crown, like that's one of the things as the person who's getting the full emergence into Michinoku Pro through this project. Like, I've seen the J Crown before, but I've never seen Sasuke across the Lucha Kingdom Comte, but I haven't seen the World Championship title series in 1996. And in a lot of ways, I feel like that the story of this episode will be what everyone else is kind of getting up to around Sasuke, and a lot of that is because of what happens exactly in that J Crown final. Like, like not to give away everything about it. This episode is kind of one of those hinge points of the great Sasuke's career, and we'll talk about how August 5th, 1996 can be seen as the end of the peak of the great Sasuke. And in a lot of ways, it's all downhill from this really, in a lot of ways, train wreck of a title match that they have in August. But Case, that's not all we have to talk about today on those days. A lot of things are afoot in the summer of 1996 around Michinoku Pro and the greater Japanese ecosystem.
So we're going to start with the state of the Japanese wrestling media in 1996, because this does affect Michinoku Pro, both of the stories that we're going to talk about at the top of this episode. And then, Mike, as I was preparing for this today, I realized that it sort of transitioned seamlessly into Great Sasuke and Tiger Mask hanging out in Mexico and the things that we liked about that. So a Japanese media intensive start to this episode, but we will open up the timeline. We will go to June 17th, 1996 in the Wrestling Observer newsletter, in which Dave Meltzer writes, the Japanese wrestling world is about to change with the official announcement on 610 at a press conference of the debut of a 24-hour cable channel known as Fighting TV. The channel, which will start on 9/1 as a premium cable channel, as compared to the U.S., cable in Japan is still in its infancy, probably a good 15 years behind the U.S., and this would be the equivalent of the starting point of ESPN, will fill its programming with pro wrestling and martial arts events. Appearing at the press conference included Antonio Inoki, Akira Maeda, and Shinya Hashimoto, while an exhibition match was performed by Michinoku Pro's Great Sasuke versus Tiger Mask as an example of the type of programming offered. With that much time to fill, it is expected that most of the smaller groups in Japan, which have almost no television, save for the 1 hour of Champ Forum, which rotates covering the various smaller promotions, will get more of a television presence. That is true. This is the launch of what we now know as Samurai TV. And as we go forward, Mike, this drastically changes the amount of Michinoku Pro footage that we get.
Right, like up to this point, and really, like this episode is kind of a love letter to the Michinoku Pro comp tape between the Sasuke Across Lucha Kingdom and the World Championship title series, two of my absolute favorite comp tapes that we've had so far with it. But Dave is very right about some things here, especially about premium channels in Japan. Like the idea of cable as it really exists, like it's still to this day, and even more so, it is a splinter of the overall viewing base that they have more than like their license fee, and it's even less now because of the proliferation of streaming. I mean, we're in 2026. In case you know who right now is one of the biggest stars now in Japanese wrestling social media because of their appearance on streaming shows.
No.
Yuma Anzai is a finalist on the Japanese version of The Bachelorette right now, and that is on a streaming service. And it is such a different kind of things now 30 years later. Like that's where like star power is happening. And you could also kind of in a way look at Michinoku Pro of 1996 and All Japan of 2026 and do a compare and contrast there. But like the TV ecosystem in of itself does not drastically change over the next 30 years because cable still, I mean, Gawara was JCTV before this, and like they had Champ Forum as a show with it, but it was still a very small percentage of the overall marketplace. I mean, when we talk with Jay Church on VoiceGate episodes, like the discussions about Gawara and its financials and like basically what it's all hinged about, which is Japanese baseball, is like one of those kind of underlying points within Japanese wrestling of like the 20s of the 2020s and probably into the 2030s in a lot of ways. So I think it's interesting for that point. And then, yeah, no, with Samurai TV, everyone gets a time slot. And I don't know at this point, like when like we're essentially going to be getting before the end of 96 episodes, I think, of Samurai TV, or is it 97 where they really start hitting for Michinoku Pro?
It's definitely 97. You know what? No, we get, because I'm looking ahead now, we get the Tag League in 1996 on Samurai TV. I think that's their debut.
Which is something we really, up until the year previous, we did not get any Fudanari Tag League. You know?
No, it's been a bummer because I think a lot of those matches have looked really good. I mean, we talked last year because we covered that because that was when Kato Kung Lee came in and teamed with Sasuke. And I really wish we got a better picture of what that tournament would have looked like. The November 96 Michinoku Pro Tag League is, I believe, Sasuke and Santo teaming together. If not, then it's Santo and Delphin teaming together, but El Hijo del Santo comes in. So I'm glad that we get that, and we will cross that bridge shortly. And then as you get into, I mean, especially 98, 99, it's Michinoku Pro Battle Station far more than it is Michinoku Pro on Champ Forum. And so, you know, that comes with some good and some bad. I think there's probably some blocks of Michinoku Pro TV that will hit that we wish we didn't have so much of, but also, you know, there's going to be Crazy Max matches that we get early Crazy Max stuff as a result of Samurai TV existing. And I think that was a positive then, and that's certainly a positive from a historical perspective now.
Absolutely so. And I think that shows like, really, we're in 1996. Our time frame case like essentially starts in 92, and we've seen like, and if you want to take it back to Pioneer Zenshi in 89, right? You're talking about essentially, no, Zenshi was 87, but a period of a decade where you go from no independent wrestling outside of the booking offices or people bringing in parts of New Japan and All Japan or the last parts of IWE at that time to now having such a demand for independent wrestling that in 1996 you have essentially a television station that's we base all around it. And even though you do have Inoki Maeda and Hashimoto there, as we would grow to know, Samurai is the home of anyone who really has televised pro wrestling, at least up until the streaming era.
Yep. Absolutely. So that is a big deal coming. I also want to note really quick before I hit the next thing in the timeline that we covered the formation of Gaiora and how that went from JCTV to Gaiora and the origin of chant form and what that was on one of the first episodes. If that wasn't episode 1, that
It was
had
in
to
one
have
or
been,
two.
yeah, 1 or 2. And I thought that stuff was really interesting because I had never really heard anybody talk about some of the stuff that we talked about there. So if you're jumping in the middle, again, I know a lot of people have jumped in because it's Michinoku Pro 1996, but I think we did some really interesting stuff on those first 3 or 4 episodes, just in terms of the history of Japanese independent wrestling and how we got here and the culture surrounding it. So I would recommend checking that out. We also have this note from the Observer. This is on July 8th, 1996, again tied into the Japanese media. When Dave writes, this was a pretty extensive story that he covered throughout the summer of 1996, but we get the big update here, in which he notes, in what is a landmark story when it comes to wrestling journalism, Tarzan Yamamoto, the editor of Weekly Pro Wrestling since its debut in 1984, resigned this past week. Yamamoto had been embroiled in a feud with New Japan Pro Wrestling, the country's largest office, which along with the UWFI and WAR had banned the magazine from covering its events for the past few months. With magazine sales declining 8% in the past month alone, while rival Weekly Gong had seen a 16% increase and was selling its copies at the newsstands at a record rate, according to most reports, with Dave noting in parentheses, some reports are that Gong was selling 95% of its newsstand mags, which is a figure totally unheard of in the magazine publishing business, where 30 to 40% is considered successful. And Dave goes on to continue, since it was the only full-color weekly to cover those 3 offices, that being Weekly Gong. Yamamoto resigned. It is believed, although not official at press time, that New Japan will now allow Weekly Pro, a subsidiary of baseball magazine Shaw, to begin covering its events starting with the G1 Climax in August. With so many major New Japan, UWFI, and WAR events in the summer and fall, the pressure on Weekly Pro to end the war amidst declining sales as important, the fact that its main competitor has become so hot has become enormous as of late. Weekly Pro has gone to heavy coverage of All Japan, Michinoku, Rings, Pancrase, the Japanese garbage groups, women, and American wrestling, and in particular has pushed ECW to the moon to pick up the slack. Yamamoto, who is credited with bringing mainstream coverage of pro wrestling in Japan from the Aftermag level almost to Observer level, except that his magazine has a circulation of 300,000 per week, making it far more influential. By all accounts, Yamamoto was one of the most powerful and influential people in wrestling in Japan. According to one book on pro wrestling written in Japan, Yamamoto was called the most influential person in the entire pro wrestling world. In particular, after successfully promoting a show in April of 1995, which sold out the Tokyo Dome and had main event caliber matches from 13 different offices, the other publications and others in the business got even hotter at the power he was able to wield, and that groups were supposedly afraid that if they didn't cooperate with his show, it would mean diminished coverage in the most important magazine. Rival publications were so bitter at the power wielded that for the most part, they boycotted coverage of it in some ways, and even though it was the biggest pro wrestling event in the country ever. There were fears and rumors started throughout Japan, which turned out to be unfounded, that Yamamoto, age 50, who also hosted his own late-night weekly pro wrestling talk show for most of the last year, was going to use the Dome show, which drew something like 5.5 million, as a springboard to start his own promotion. Others had criticized him as of late for favoring promotions that he had business dealings with, which Weekly Pro being heavily criticized by outsiders for its deal where it markets ECW tapes in Japan, and exchange has given ECW tons of coverage in the magazine. Yamamoto had bragged at WrestleMania in regards to the New Japan ban that he had never lost a war yet. He had previous conflicts with All Japan, WAR, SWS, etc., all of which resulted in the promotions making amends with him because of the power his magazine yielded. With New Japan so hot and Weekly Pro banned from coverage, he was in a war that this time he didn't win. However, those close to him say that this resignation, in many ways, is more than it seems, a calculated wrestling angle, and that he's going to leave, write a few books on pro wrestling, and return to another venue as powerful as ever.
Yeah, there's a lot here.
Dave killing me with his sentence structure there. Good Lord. Oh, my God.
My 7th grade English teacher would have a field day diagramming those. Did you have to diagram sentences, or is that something that has gone by the generations, that sentence diagramming is no longer a torture that's foisted upon middle schoolers?
That doesn't sound familiar.
Oh, you're lucky. You're a lucky, man. But yeah, but let's parse through the Meltzerese. This has been one of the things that I've always kind of found interesting about this project was, like, in the 90s, the extent of the power of the Japanese wrestling magazine. And going back to like how you were referring to our earlier episodes, Wally Yamaguchi, at one point the editor or one of the editors of Weekly Gong, along with Mr. Lucha Susumu Shimizu, heavily involved with Michinoku Pro and heavily involved in the first few years promoting it within the magazines, and also his various dirt sheets that he would contribute to as well. Whereas Yamamoto, and like one of the things about Weekly Pro and Baseball Magazine Shot is when they bring up the tape business case, have you noticed that who the comp tapes come from for Michinoku Pro if they're not a Michinoku Pro created comp tape? Do you notice what company is the one putting them out for people in the 90s?
No, I have not.
It's Baseball Magazine Shah.
Mm.
So it is Weekly Pro being involved with this. So Yamamoto's fingers were deep onto everything in a lot of different ways here. And I mean, to the point of the Bridge of Dreams show, I never, other than this Dave quote here, never heard the idea of Tarzan Yamamoto wanting to make a new promotion launch out of that April 1995 Dome show.
No,
I just thought that
I'm fascinated by that because I don't know who his from a talent standpoint, I don't know who his strongest ally would have been and what the jumping off point would have been there.
Right. And the thing about like the battles and the wars, like that it was noticeable. SWS and Weekly Pro were never on the same page. Like him and Tenryu were enemies for a long for like a real long time, like up until after Bridge of Dreams, when the War thing in it, because War was the one show that was company not involved with Bridge of Dreams back in 95, and they ran a competing show at Cork and Hall that day that Weekly Gong had like its entire magazine being based on because they weren't going to cover this. And this is where I'm going to put my ignorance about Yamamoto on display. Is this it for Tarzan Yamamoto in his career? Because I don't remember hearing of this guy into a point where I would have been at consuming wrestling stuff. Like this seems like that this is it for this guy.
I don't know either. I'm going to try to look real quick, but I am unsure.
Yeah. People who would have been more of the moment and would have remembered like that, I would love to hear. Tarzan Yamamoto seems to be doing, he might still be alive. Yeah, Tarzan Yamamoto doing interviews as of last year with the Totocon store. So he's still around.
Oh, there's a bigger conversation we could possibly have about this. Oh, I wish I would have thought of this before we started recording, because it looks like on Pro Wrestling Only there's quite a bit written about Yamamoto, but it's too much to get through right now. That's a bummer. Okay. I might come into the Discord and have more information at a later date. We'll have to see. What I uncover here.
I am just discovering that Tarzan Yamamoto is affiliated with the Totocon store, which is one of the biggest Japanese merchandise stores in all of Japan.
Mm-hmm.
So still kicking around apparently in some juncture.
Still kicking around indeed. So we have that, we've got the introduction of Samurai TV, which again is going to be of great benefit to Michinoku Pro. We have the magazine note because Michinoku Pro was so aided by the magazines, especially towards the end of 1993, once they partner with Onita. And then from there, Sasuke has the J Cup and becomes somewhat of a media darling. And so Michinoku Pro seemed to always have an ally in Weekly Pro. So that is the update there. We now turn our attention to our favorite topic, which is the great Sasuke going to Mexico. And luckily this time we do not have pontifications over when or where Sasuke is going. We actually have Sasuke on foot in Mexico. Michinoku Pro Lucha Paradise, July 1996, the commercial tape. Mike Spears, I loved this so much.
This is, and I think I said this a couple episodes ago about Crisis and Lucha Paradise. Across Lucha Kingdom might be my favorite comp tape that they have, just because of how much just extra flavor is on top. You essentially have two full matches and then clips of a tournament, but a lot of it is essentially Sasuke and Tiger Mask 4 hanging out in Mexico. First, you get them at the airport. They head to Mexico. They get on a riverboat, and Sasuke, all the while, he has like a grimace on his face throughout all of these tapes. And then Yona Genjin shows up on the tape, and Taka Michinoku as well. And then Yone Genjin like comes out of nowhere at like a marketplace, and people start calling him the Chupacabra because these random people in Mexico don't know who this guy with face paint and wearing a singlet is. And it's just a great time, and it goes right into a match from Plata del Revolucion from July 6, 1997, Sasuke, Tiger Mask 4, and Atlantis versus Negro Casas, Santanico, and Dr. Wagner Jr. And the good time just keeps on continuing when we get into the ring as well, Case.
Yeah, I'm really glad we got this specific match because this was CMLL's like third tier Mexico City venue behind Arena Mexico and Arena Coliseo, and I don't get the impression that stuff from this venue may tape all that often. I certainly
no, it doesn't
don't remember.
Exist anymore.
No,
like
it closed up in 1997. This is probably the last bit of footage that exists from there. I think it closed in the spring of 97. Here we are in the summer of 96, but we're at a point in I know this because I've been going through so much of this footage lately, but we're not getting full Arena Mexico shows and we're not getting full Arena Coliseo shows. So to get something from this venue is awesome because it's a rarity, and I think the venue looks great on camera. And I think, unfortunately, this is a comp tape that follows the great Sasuke around Mexico and not a comp tape that follows Tiger Mask 4 around Mexico, because the joy of this match, like you said, Sasuke, Tiger Mask, and Atlantis versus Negro Casas, Dr. Wagner Jr., and Satanico. Tiger Mask 4 and Satanico should have been career-long rivals. Those two have phenomenal...
Satanico rules.
Satanico rules. I know. It took me forever to get on board with it. I'm sorry. I now understand the Satanico rules. It's funny that you said that because we were talking about Taka Michinoku earlier today, and I went on his Lucha DB to remind myself. I was like, oh, okay, he starts working CMLL in 1997, and there's a Taka Satanico Independent Junior Championship match that headlines a Coliseo show in 1997 that either didn't make tape or it made tape, but we don't have the tape of it. We don't have the TV of it. And I started thinking, like, God, is there a match that I want to see more right now than 1997 Taka against 1997 Satanico? Because here in 96, he's unbelievably great with Tiger Mask.
Yeah, and just Satanico in of itself working with Sasuke and Tiger Mask for just a different kind of heel than what we have in Michinoku Pro. And it kind of had the thought in my mind, like, what would Satanico really look like, this kind of heel really be in Michinoku Pro? But Tiger Mask 4 is so solid throughout this, and he really feels like, oh wait, this is a guy who is really getting to expose himself in like a new environment. But just as much of that, it's him getting to experience, like, Sasuke had been going to Mexico since 90 at this point. Like we make jokes about 91. We make jokes about him trying to get back into Mexico after a Michinoku Pro starts up, but like he had that kind of basis and that footing, and of course being a student of Hamada's Universal, that was his bread and butter. Like, this is Tiger Mask 4's like first real exposure to that, and I think that through this match, it's just such a really kind of cool experience to see. And I thought he like worked also really well with Wagner in the few bits that we got with him with those two together. And the thing that I really enjoy this match, the thing that is a little disappointment, is that this match really is building up the Sasuke and Casas match coming up later, and it's almost to the detriment of how much fun Tiger Mask 4 is in this.
It takes me a long time, and we'll get there, and I'll point it out when we get there. It takes me a long time to warm up to the Sasuke Casas chemistry. Specifically, it takes me until the third fall in their singles match to really embrace it, because you're right. They are, in this six-man tag, I mean, they're probably the two least interesting guys in it, because Atlantis and Dr. Wagner Jr. are excellent with one another, and we've said our piece on Tiger Mask and Satanico and just how much fun they are there. So this is a match worth watching from the historical anecdote of it's the Tiger Mask for Mexico debut. They're in a venue that hardly ever makes tape. It's Sasuke's first time in Mexico in forever. It's a bunch of all-time great luchadors during a period in which they were wrestling like all-time greats. The match is cut up a little bit. I wish we really got the full uncut version of this match, but for what it is, I loved this.
Yeah, from what we have, I felt comfortable enough going 3 3/4 on it.
I cannot begrudge you for that. So on the comp tape from there, we get the opening match, and then we see Sasuke and Tiger Mask walking into what I assume was a place that maybe Sasuke lived while he was living in Mexico in the early 90s. And we get these cool photos of Sasuke before Michinoku Pro, during the earliest days of the great Sasuke gimmick. Tiger Mask 4 is walking around in an incredible Michinoku Pro jacket that looks like a Michinoku Pro starter jacket. I don't know what brand it was, but I want it. If anybody knows where I can get it, please let me know. And as I was watching this tape, which is two Japanese guys hanging out in Mexico, speaking some Spanish and some Japanese, but definitely no English, it really dawned on me, and I think this is one of those larger media points that we can make and we can tie it back into wrestling. The magazine style show is something that I think is greatly missing from all media, but especially wrestling. And I was thinking about it in regards to modern day CMLL as we sit here in May of 2026. And I was thinking about it in regards to modern day Dragon Gate as we sit here in May 2026. And, you know, for instance, it was about a month ago that CMLL announced that, okay, we're going to give you the full Tuesday Arena Mexico show live. We're going to give you the Tuesday Guadalajara show on tape delay. You're going to get the Friday Arena Mexico show live. You're going to get the Saturday Arena Coliseo show live. Now you're going to get the Sunday Arena Mexico show live and the Monday Arena Puebla show live. And as somebody that, you know, loves CMLL, even if I haven't been in love with it in 2026, because as Cubs wrote, and I thought this was such a brilliant line, he goes, there's been a lot of programming and not a lot of booking in 2026 CMLL, which I'm so jealous of that line. That's such an astute point. It's too much. I don't need all of this. One, I wish that I could consume CMLL. If I had my say, it would be live Friday full show, live Saturday full show, and then give me like a 90-minute broadcast of whatever the best thing from Sunday, the best thing from Monday, and the best thing from Tuesday are. And then give me a wacky feature on Shelwa. Give me a wacky feature on Mystico touring the globe. Give me Atlantis Jr. and Atlantis Sr. hanging out. Give
More
me
of Mystico with the singer Mimuera.
Yeah,
like,
or Mystico with BTS. Like there's unexplored stuff here that I feel like is detrimental to media in general. You know, if I could control the way that Dragon Gate stuff aired, I would want the full live Korakuen show, maybe the full Kobe or Osaka, but really what I want is I want the Vamonos Amigos format back, where it's guys at a desk and we're cutting to the best stuff from all the house shows. Like I kind of think that is maybe the way that this stuff is best consumed. And it's like a larger point where I think the magic of this editing style is lost, because somebody could very easily come back and go, well, okay, well, Sasuke and Tiger Mask are essentially doing a travel vlog. I mean, we have a more modernized version of this, but I think there's power in the idea of the cutting room floor, and there's power in the idea of making things be a certain way and have a certain look and a certain zip to the cuts. And even now when I look at the way, like I'm thinking about the NBA draft coming up, and I was watching the draft lottery and I was watching some of the packages they produced for that show, and it almost has the tenor now in American sports. They sort of have the WWE issue where people will say that Raw is like a show about wrestling. And sometimes I'll watch these sports packages and it's like they're doing a video package about a basketball player. We have lost the art of editing in the way that weirdly the Sasuke Goes to Mexico comp tape has perfected.
Yeah, because like you also had like him going, just getting these slices of life that I feel like imagine just going back to the Dragon Gate beat just for 1 second. Whenever someone is in Mexico or is in the UK and is on excursion for like something like that, or they were just in the United States for WrestleMania weekend, like having those kinds of little bit of interest things. And there's things on the network that do public interesty and more magazine-y kind of thing. But like the fact of like the TV programs, and I think it's just essentially like tying back to Samurai coming out and then Gaora and the proliferation of just having the available TV time and basically being told like you have 2 hours or a 90-minute slot, choose what you want to get in there with it. You're forced to be creative with it. But we live in an era now that, at least what as a Drag Gate, but for nearly every single promotion case, we get the whole show. Like weirdly enough, the promotions you don't get the whole show are AEW and WWE because you don't get the dark matches. Like those are the times you don't get the whole show nowadays. Like, but we're like so far past that. I don't know how can anyone kind of go back there, because it also similarly like the loss of the like music video package as a thing on TV shows as well. Like that, I think that's been another thing within professional wrestling. You used to have like the great promo packages that you don't see anymore, like the hype videos too.
I think, and look, this is all for naught because ultimately, and I apologize for having such a defeatist attitude. I try not to have it, but ultimately our lives are going to be dictated by about 13 or 14 of the richest people on earth. And we're going to be forced to be met with technology that we don't want, with surveillance that we can't control. But I feel, and I say this as a 27-year-old that is noticing trends around me, that there is some sort of social movement happening right now to scale down the amount of tech in our lives. And that's not to say that college age students, yes, dumb phones. I was talking to somebody in the music industry recently about iPods and how they've got a kid who's 18 and that kid really wants an old school iPod to be able to disconnect from the phone but still be able to have music. And I think Apple's making a ginormous mistake by not selling iPods that are automatically subscribed to Apple Music. And it's crazy to say that Apple's missing the boat on something, but Apple's completely missing the boat on not mass producing old iPod Nanos and just having Apple Music hook up to them. But there's a growing movement, I think, to rethink the way that tech is playing into our lives. And again, that's not to say that college age students aren't using AI, and that's not to say that college age students aren't using ChatGPT, but I also think there's now becoming a more vocal crowd that is rejecting that sort of stuff. And I think that group is now big enough to where they have to be acknowledged. And I say all of this as now a long-time residing Japanese wrestling fan, somebody that has been through a few different eras of fandoms and seen a few different things come and go. And I think for the industry at large, I think streaming has been really negative for Japanese wrestling. I think these shows look ugly. I think a lot of these shows were not meant to be seen in full, and they were better off that way. I think historically it's going to be a nightmare to try to rewatch some of this stuff when the only video files that exist are 3-hour Hokkaido Dragon Gate show files where it's like,
MKVs
okay, well,
that,
hey, I really liked match 4 on this. Okay, well, good luck finding that. There's no timestamps, it's knock yourself out trying to go through the scrubber bar there. And I think the lack of production around Japanese wrestling is something that is really noticeable to me right now, and it's really ugly. And I don't think we would talk about Michinoku Pro in the 90s in the same way we do if we were getting some of these full shows. Now, as we talk about every episode, there's house shows that we don't get footage of where I go, God, I would kill to see that match. Oh my God. There's so many Delphin singles matches that we're not getting that I would really like to see. But I also think, hey, there's a ton of All Japan, Noah, and Dragon Gate stuff that maybe I don't need to see in 2026. Maybe if this was a studio show in the Vamanos Amigos format, maybe we would all be better off, and maybe it would be more enjoyable to consume that way.
Yeah, and
which just also, sorry, just to cut you off 1 second, but that just I want to make sure that I'm making my point clearly. 10 years ago, it was unimaginable to say, I want less footage. I want less of this. I don't need this much. But I think we've hit this maximalist point in technology where now we can look at the situation, and this might be the only time in human history that there's a growing movement to scale back, that maybe we didn't need all of this. Maybe just some of it was fine. There's been great advancements made. I mean, again, I say this as somebody who, when I started watching Japanese wrestling, it was pre-New Japan World, still on Ustream. The G1 Climax cost $150 to watch, and we all thought that was a great financial investment, like a great deal. The fact that when I watch a Dragon Gate show live, there are other people watching a Noah show or a New Japan show or a DDT show or an All Japan show or a Stardom show live, and at times they're flipping back and forth between them. That will never not be amazing to me, and I'm glad that we live in that reality. But I think streaming, specifically these streaming sites for Japanese wrestling, have been really detrimental to what Japanese wrestling can be.
Yeah, because the point I was going to make earlier, like imagine like Michi World exists, and suddenly every show is available, and every show has that 15-minute Wellington Wilkins Jr. versus Yone Genja match. Like there are certain things that you don't necessarily need to see. Like in the great scheme of things, would it be neat to see Rookie Gamma in 1996 make tape and see what his deal is and what his bag is and if he has anything or not? Yeah, it would be. But let's be completely honest. Like, would you forsake any of that for the opportunity to have full like a full Hamada match, or to have clips from various matches in order giving up having Yoshihiro Sugimoto rookie matches is something that I feel like with time that we can easily say, you know what, we're good with what we have with the comp tapes, and then future champ forums and Samurai TV listings in with that, because the times that we get full Michinoku Pro shows, I mean, we're now 16 episodes in, we're almost four full calendar years into it. When you get the full shows, like there are things that I think that we both are at a point where we're like, okay, are we really watching this now here? And imagine having to have that every show available to you, and you're sitting through all of that. I just don't think that it would have a good intended effect to have all that available.
I just think, yeah, I wish wrestling companies in 2026, specifically Japanese wrestling companies, although I think CMLL is going to very quickly become guilty of this, I just wish they would rethink their distribution methods. I'm just not sure that it's the best way going forward. I mean, I think the greatest advancement in all of this is that we get to see all of these rookies in a way that we've never seen them before. And for somebody with my sensibilities, that's really exciting. And I don't really want to get rid of that. But I also think maybe it would be better for modern day Dragon Gate standards if we saw all of Korakuen, maybe all of Kobe, and then a 90-minute highlight show with, Ichikawa and Kai at the desk, commentating over the last tour. And then, again, the Mystico BTS thing. And I know this is partially just a victim of the 24-hour news cycle and everything is old news as soon as it becomes new news. But like, Mystico was with maybe the biggest entertainment actor in the world that isn't Taylor Swift. And I don't really feel like CMLL made the most of that. And that might be a CMLL specific problem, but that is a huge deal that I don't think that company capitalized on, because it's just, hey, it's the live stream. We do the live stream. We turn it over. I would like to see the magazine style Mystico and BTS backstage high-fiving and meeting each other, whatever it may be. And I think in media, we're just really missing those personality pieces right now. It's the same thing. I went back on YouTube recently. Something popped up in the algorithm that was one of those old VH1 countdown shows, which it was, the 100 best songs of the 90s or whatever, which are, it's filler programming. Now, to me as a child, that was the height of fame, was being able to be a talking head on a VH1 show. That's all I've ever wanted to do. But
you wanted to hang out with Hal Sparks. Yeah.
Hal Sparks, Chuck Nice, young John Mulaney. To me, that as a child, that was what being famous was that you get to go to VH1 and they go, do you have thoughts on Nirvana heart-shaped box? And you go, yes, I do. Here are my... That, to me, was the pinnacle of fame. And it still kind of is in my mind. I wanted to hang out with Hal Sparks and Chuck Nice. But, if you go back and watch those broadcasts, the editing is so tight. Those shows move in such an incredible way that even in the 10-second, all right, that's generous, but the 3-second attention span world that we live in, I was so fully captivated by the editing in a show like that. And that is gone from modern media. That just does not exist anymore.
Yeah, and I think that at least when you think about like those kind of like talking head kind of things, it is something where, geez, that used to be a career. It seemed like
Yes.
like comedians would go and they would do those to supplement that was the podcasting of the day, was to do I love the 80s.
And there was actual money involved, which isn't a thing in the entertainment industry anymore. I mean, that's, on a professional level, that's where I always get a little defensive of radio, is if I start talking about the financial woes of the radio industry, people go, well, that's just what radio is. I go, talk to anybody in TV, talk to TV news people. Like I count my blessings every day. I make a very nice living for what I do. It's not as much as it would have been 20 years ago, which I'm acutely aware of, but there's no money in anything. I always think about the Patton Oswalt story where he's like, I did one guest spot on Seinfeld and I was pretty much able to pay my rent for the next year because of it. And that avenue just doesn't exist anymore. And doing the VH1 talking head spot, that might pay your rent for that month. And you're not going to get that just by doing another podcast.
Right. Yeah. No. It's it's something that I think about a lot. The how the creator economy has completely cratered all kinds of media just because and then the news station things. I know that what I was going into school for 20 years ago in the broadcast TV film world, it's so completely dialed down to an extent that, I mean, I don't know if they're actual. I know that there are some editors still with major market TV stations, but when you get down to past your top 100, are you shooting, filming, editing, and basically doing everything as a broadcaster versus how there used to be full-on TV studios with dedicated cameramen and camera trucks?
I know a few news reporters here, and they're either a 1 or 2 person crew, and the things that they're tasked with doing for sometimes alarmingly little money is unbelievable.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely wild. After the Sasuke trios match, we got the Torneo Grand Prix Junior from 1996 and clips from Arena Mexico. We got stuff of the clips of all the Michinoku Pro guys kind of involved with it. Tiger Mask 4 was facing El Felino and lost. Bestia Salvaje defeats Yone Genjin, and then Sasuke goes on a run. He beats a young Rey Bucanero in the first round. Then he takes care of Yone Genjin's failed bid on Bestia Salvaje to beat him, and then Felino. So basically, there was a Michinoku Pro region of this tournament, and then everything else. So he beats everyone who beats Michinoku Pro guys, and that allows him to have a final with Hio del Santo, and we get clips of that as well. Santo defeating Sasuke to win the 1996 Junior Grand Prix, or Torneo Grand Prix Junior, which is something also we get essentially as much as we really need out of that tournament is what we get on the tape. And I think that was it gave us right the amount of flavor we needed before we get to the meat of the tape, the thing that everything was kind of built up for, Sasuke and Negro Casas and Coliseo.
Yeah, super fun concept on the Grand Prix. I was thinking about how I wish AEW would steal this as a concept and do a Dynamite that is 1 2-hour gauntlet match. I think that would get over by the end of it. I think that would be really, really fun. So somebody in AEW take notes. I think that would be a great concept. The Bucanero Sasuke portion rocked. Now, Rey Bucanero, I mean, that's a guy who did Hamada's Universal tours. He probably wrestled Sasuke.
I forgot that he did.
Yeah.
That he was around back then.
He was around in either 92 or 93. I'm sure he wrestled Sasuke at some point in Japan. And man, he jumped off the screen in this. I think just because of all the Ultimo Guerrero footage I've been watching and then seeing him here, it was sort of a subtle reminder that historically speaking, because in 2026 he doesn't really have much left, but we might have to put more respect on Rey Bucanero's name than we do. He was awesome.
Absolutely, especially considering like the period of the 2000s where Bucanero and Ultimo Guerrero was the best tag team in the world.
Yeah, I want to go back now that I've watched so much Ultimo Guerrero stuff recently. I want to go back and watch their Toryumon tour from late 2002, because it's never just, I've never had any emotional attachment to it. It's stuff that I've seen and moved on from, but I think they wrestle Ultimo and Iwasa on a T2P show, and then I think there's a tag where it's maybe Ultimo and Dragon Kid against those two. I need to revisit that because I would like to watch that with 2026 eyes and not like 2018. I don't really care about Ultimo Guerrero eyes.
Nah, man. I have a big soft spot for Ultimo and Bucanero as a tag team.
Yeah,
they were
really good stuff there.
Amazing stuff there.
So that's the Grand Prix. I do want to note before we get into the Arena Coliseo match, there's two other things that happened in the comp tape that, again, just
I almost mentioned we had a good friend pop by.
Yeah, so they just do a shot of Sasuke and Tiger Mask walking around Mexico in like maybe an apartment complex, and then somebody opens the door and it's Kendo, and then they just run into Kendo, and then Kendo's hanging out with them, and it's just like, oh my god, I wish I was there with them. I want to hang out with Kendo and Sasuke and Tiger Mask together. They look like they're having so much fun.
I mean, Kendo was just like, he seemed elated to come talk to his boys out there.
I have in my notes verbatim, they run into the fucking lad Kendo in Mexico, and that perfectly describes what they do. Oh fuck, Kendo's here. This is awesome.
Like, I love the fact that, like, dating back to like the UK trip, just the idea that Tiger Mask 4 and Sasuke are just traveling buddies, and maybe like that there was their own version of like the trip, like the Rob Coogan, the Rob Brydon Steve Coogan movie, like the two of them, and it's like, oh yeah, we go found our friend the absolute lad Kendo while we were hanging around in Mexico City before the match in Coliseo. Like, of course they did.
It was awesome. That was such a joyous occasion. And then we go to Coliseo, and we really only get a second of Tiger Mask, Vampiro, and Lizmark against Satanico, Violencia, and Black Warrior. The only reason I mention this is, so Black Warrior does a tour of Michinoku Pro in 1999, and that is sort of 99 and 2000 is where cage match gets really sparse with their Michinoku Pro results. So I don't know how much Black Warrior will get on tape when he eventually gets there, but that is a wrestler who I have fallen in love with, and I think he would have been such a perfect fit for, in the same way that we wish we would have gotten more Super Astro and Michinoku Pro. I think Black Warrior's the other guy where it's like, oh man, if we could have just had him 96, 97, 98 here on a semi-full-time basis, I think his legacy would be completely different. But we get him in 99, I just don't know how much.
Yeah, but it's also it seemed like in that clip that Vampiro was very pleased to see how much taller he was than Tiger Mask.
Yes, it reminded me of when we were, I forget what show oh god, now it's gonna drive me nuts. We were doing some show for Rewind and Rewatch. It must have been the T2P debut. Maybe we were talking about a Toryumon Mexico show that Vampiro showed up late to, and then he just happened to show up to the arena to Arena del Capone as the substitute main eventer got injured and got taken away, and then Vampiro came in and did a shoot run-in, but his shoot run-in involved him signing autographs for fans in the entryway. He just completely fucked up the timing of the match. God, I can't, I mean, it had to have been 2001, so whatever show we were doing that had to have been the T2P show we did, but yeah, Vampiro, always a delight when he gets in the ring with Lucharesu guys, because he's Vampiro and he's awful.
But then we have from July 7th, 1996, from Arena Coliseo, the NWA welterweight title match, Great Sasuke versus Negro Casas. We get all three falls of this one in the full match. Casas takes 2 of 3 to win. The last fall, it was the La Casita to get the win here. And really, kind of a super slow Primera Segunda, and it took until that last Tercera for, I think, the two of them to come together, as you were saying earlier.
Yeah, the first two falls are really nothing spectacular. The second fall is pretty drawn out with a lot of Negro Casas antics, some of which hit, some of which don't. It's literally like a spot by spot basis on if I'm entertained by the guy or not. But by the time we get to the third fall, Casas really hones in on Sasuke's leg. And you saw it actually after the trios match. Sasuke lifts up his pant leg and he has the most absurd large knee brace on. Like, I just did that podcast with Alan Forel. We were talking about Stone Cold Steve Austin's knee braces, and Sasuke has somehow an even bigger one on his knee in the summer of 1996. And so that's when Casas really hones in on the knee. And it becomes a really entertaining third fall where you get to see the greatness of Casas in a way that I don't really think was represented in the trios match, and I don't really think was represented in the first two falls. But if you like Negro Casas, you get sort of a vintage performance by him in that third fall. And you get Sasuke, killing himself. I mean, he does that dive over the post, that one-legged kick he likes doing to the floor, and he does it
the hip eraser. The hip
eraser, yes. And he does it in Coliseo where, that entryway is so small and then the floor is so hard and he just eats shit doing it, but he does it and it looks awesome.
Yeah, no, there were certain things about Sasuke throughout this episode of him throwing his body around that is just, it's a wonder that everything, like, it took until the J Crown final for things to actually like actively like start falling apart, because that was one of the, like, I felt it in my hip, him jumping in, like the way that he does the kick and landing each time is gnarly. And that's after what one of the moves that I loved in this match that Negro Casas does, and it's a move for the list of moves that people really don't do anymore, is the rope slung splash mountain to take out the knee. And the way that Casas does it is just vicious, and he throws his whole weight behind it. And Sasuke, of course, sells it like he just got his knee ripped off, and it really finally started to get that going in that third fall, because like that is what he does immediately to start the third fall, and then from there it's kind of off to the races.
It is indeed. So a really fun comp tape, all things considered. Mike, I don't know if you looked at Sasuke's match listing for his time in Mexico. Do you know, before we move on, the other match that he worked for CMLL on this tour that we got zero footage of?
No. What building is it in?
It's in Arena Puebla. July 8th.
I love Arena Puebla.
I do too. Yeah. It holds a real soft spot in my heart. July 8th, 1996. Sasuke, Tiger Mask, and Tsubasa against Black Warrior, Rey Bucanero, and Scorpio Jr. And we don't see a second of that match.
What's Tsubasa doing there?
This is when Tsubasa is just living and training in Mexico.
Oh, that's right.
He's one of those guys.
Yeah, he is one of those guys. That's right. Yeah. But it just, yeah. I just always identify him with ending up in an Osaka Pro so quickly.
But that is, I think, by way of. Well, his career fascinates me. I mean, I would love to know more about Tsubasa, but yeah, 1996 Black Warrior and Rey Bucanero in the same matches, Sasuke and Tiger Mask and Tsubasa. I know. I just said
Yone Genjin stays in Mexico. His debut it was on June 9th. It was before this tape, June 25th, 1996. Yone Genjin and Zumbido were in his debut match with Atlantico and Kung Fu and Damian El Guerrero.
Oh, that match sounds awesome. Oh, my God.
I'm really bummed we did not get more Yone Genjin in Mexico, because I feel like he would really work there.
I don't feel that way. I'm bummed we don't have more Black Warrior, and I am bummed we don't have more Tsubasa, because I've always really liked Tsubasa's work.
Hey. I wonder if Kuga was knocking around back then down there.
I mean, they probably just missed out on Super Shisa getting involved, because Shisa, I mean, he's there in 94 with Hayabusa, and then I don't know what he's doing until 97 when Ultimo shows up.
Yeah, he could just be fooling around in Mexico, hanging out with Yone Genjin and Tsubasa.
Fascinating. And I think he was tight with Tsubasa. I mean, he was probably around the circle, but I don't believe he ever worked for CMLL. If he did, it was under a mask, and we don't know that it's him. But
Well, there are times that like there are issues with like sometimes in 97, 98 when he's around where Saito, he sees all caps Saito, and there are some times that they think that he's listed as Ryo Saito too.
yes, no, that is
So like
yes.
he has like name issues that like he might slip through, is my point.
Most people don't realize how much their personal information is being bought and sold every day. Data brokers are making billions pulling details about you from public records and the internet, and then packaging and selling it, usually without your consent. That's how your information lands in the hands of scammers, spammers, even stalkers. It's why you get endless robocalls and why ads seem to follow you everywhere. That's where Aura comes in. Aura actively removes your data from broker sites and keeps it off. They also instantly alert you if your information shows up in a breach or on the dark web. But Aura goes beyond data protection. With one app, you get a VPN, antivirus, password manager, spam call protection, dark web monitoring, and even up to $5 million in identity theft insurance, all backed by 24/7 US-based fraud support. Other companies might sell just credit monitoring or just a VPN. Aura gives you all of it, together, at the same price competitors charge for just one service. Start your free trial today at aura.com/remove. Protect yourself now at aura.com/remove.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. That's fascinating. But yeah, Black Warrior, Rainbow Canero, Scorpio Jr. versus Sasuke, Tiger Mask, and Tsubasa in Arena Puebla, and we don't see a second of it, which is a bummer. We do have this, though, from the July 29th Observer, in which Dave writes that the Japanese magazines had extensive coverage of the Casas versus Sasuke NWA welterweight title match on 7/7 at Arena Coliseo, reporting the crowd at 4,500. From the photos, that figure may not have been an exaggeration, as the place looked pretty packed. Casas won the match to give him the final position in the Junior Heavyweight Tournament of Champions in Japan next month. The Japanese mags gave Sasuke, the current IWGP Junior Champion, the excuse for losing, saying he was only at 75% because he wasn't acclimated to either the altitude or the smog, which is a fantastic note.
People and athletes were using that excuse back in the 90s. They're using it in the Mexico Olympics as well.
Dave would continue in this same Observer. Apparently, tickets for the UWFI Baseball Stadium show on 8/17 with Anjo versus Nobuhiko Takada as the main event are going slow. They asked Great Sasuke to work the show, which says something for a group that bills itself as shoot style to bring in a lucha libre specialist. Sasuke was asked to work against Satoru Sayama, but turned them down, thinking that if Sayama was willing to do the match against him, Sasuke would rather book it on one of his own big cards. Sasuke may still work the show, however, and to note there, Sasuke does not work that show, so that ends up being a moot point. But I thought that was a really funny note of Sasuke going like, well, I'll do that on a Michinoku Pro show if I want to do it.
We'll put it in a car park and you hop it, draw 3,500. It'll be great.
It'll be great. So that takes us from Mexico back to Japan, and we are now entering the World Championship title series. This is now, essentially going forward, Mike, outside of the exception of one New Japan match that we'll talk about here momentarily. This is all represented on the same comp tape, and we'll just follow this from start to finish.
Yep, let's do it. So this comp tape is from the last 2 weeks of July into late August of 1996. It's the World Series title series. It's the World Championship title series case. And we start this tape off talking about all the titles we're going to be seeing across this tape. And before we get into this case, we do kind of need to like take a moment to discuss is Sasuke spending all this money on making title belts? Because there's a lot of title belts on these shows that exist and only really exist in Michinoku Pro, or they're being defended like the British Empire title, and there's no example of it on the internet. I went searching for nearly every single of the odd titles on this show, and let me tell you, Case, the most valid title coming into the show is our first match here, as it is the former Joint Promotions and All-Star Promotions British World Light Heavyweight Champion Johnny Saint versus Masato Yakashiji in a rounds match. We're joined in progress. Saint wins in round 4 here. You barely see any of it. And that is probably of all the vanity belts, the most legitimate one that we'll be talking about on this tape.
What's your relationship like? I mean, I've done podcasts with you for 10 years
Mhm.
now, and I guess I don't really know the answer to this question. What's your relationship with World of Sport?
Geez. I have I not a deep knowledge of, but enough of. I have watched enough of the World of Sport, especially like Johnny Saint, Cat Weasel, and like this. I think that the World of Sport style comedy match, like your Les Kellets and stuff like that, that were working technical comedy, I think were really far ahead of their time in the 70s and 80s of it. But the World of Sport style, especially wrestled by people like Johnny Saint, that style of World of Sport, I have no time for, to be quite honest. I think Johnny Saint is one of the most overrated wrestlers of all time.
Oh, interesting. Okay, I would
hate
not
him.
have guessed that.
I sat through too much bad Johnny Saint as a Chikara fan in the moment.
Oh, I even like the Johnny Saint Chikara stuff.
I think that he's all exhibition and no actual grit.
Yeah, it has been. I mean, it's been 5 years since I've watched any World of Sport because I was doing a little bit of that footage when you and Al and I were doing Greatest Wrestler Ever 5 years ago. But I really haven't revisited World of Sport since I became a full-on Anglophile, which I would say that I currently am in my life. But it's a style that I really enjoy.
I know that you are holding out hope for Richie Edwards. Yeah, no, right?
Yeah. It's like, I guess that surprises a lot of people when I say it, but Jim Breaks, John Cortez, Steve Gray, Zoltan Bosick. There's a number of
I like Cortez a good deal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a style of wrestling that I really enjoy. I think Johnny Saint is sort of on the lower tier of the World of Sport guys. I think his Chikara output, with Danielson and Claudio might be the best thing he was ever a part of. I'm fascinated to know why he ended up on this tour. He does the retirement match 10-10-96, but I can't figure out why he was booked in July also.
Yeah, and like this whole thing that like this tour in 10-10-96 is why Johnny Saint had any sort of purchase in the 2000s when he was brought back around by Mike Quackenbush too.
Yeah, this is what happens when Mike Quackenbush buys Japanese wrestling tapes. This is the direct influences. We now have, I mean, Johnny Saint was the NXT UK general manager because Mike Quackenbush bought this tape.
Right, yeah. And why was he over here in the first place instead of Cortez? I know Rollerball Rocco. That's, if you're talking about British wrestlers, I really enjoy. I have enjoyed when I would go back and watch Rocco before he was and around when he was Black Tiger 1. I think Rollerball Rocco is one of the greatest. Yeah.
I need to go back and revisit his Art of Wrestling episode because I remember as a teenager listening to Rollerball Rocco on the Art of Wrestling with Cole Cabana, and I found him to be really arrogant, and it really put me off from Rollerball Rocco. But it was 10 years ago. I have no idea if I would feel, if 10 years ago, closer to 15, I have no idea if I would feel that way about it now. And I'm also now really interested in his career because whenever I watch his era of Black Tiger stuff, I really like it. So I need to revisit that episode at some point.
Yeah, like I'm surprised you never got into him. I thought that like, especially given like 70s 80s junior heavyweight heels. Like,
oh god, I mean, I love him as Black Tiger. I think some of the stuff that we have of him and Fujinami together is pretty awesome. So I wish we had more of this Johnny Saint Yakushiji match because I find their chemistry to be fascinating, and we don't really get enough of it for me to make up my mind one way or the other.
Yeah, no, we really don't. The next day we have what is called by tape traders the South American middleweight title, but it's actually the Central American middleweight title held by Kendo. There's no evidence of this belt really existing outside of Kendo having it. I don't know if he had this belt before this tour. I would not be surprised, given some of the other belts here, that this belt was made for this tour. But he defends the Central American middleweight title against Grand Nanawa. Join in progress, and Nanawa is caught in a hold to get the loss here. We'll have a lot more of the Central American title as we go forward.
Yes, not enough here for me to have any real substantial thoughts on.
Yeah, and we've been going backstage after each one of these. Nano's backstage a little bit sad. He seems like he's always sad backstage, but we get a match in full next. It's from July 21st, 1996. It is the Great Sasuke defending his IWGP Junior Heavyweight title against Shiryu.
IWGP Junior Heavyweight title being defended in Michinoku Pro, which feels, I don't know, historically significant, would you say?
Absolutely so. And I would say that also, given what will go on in this tape, the first strong match out of a series of them on from Shiryu, who I think is the MVP of this comp tape.
Oh, God, you're speaking my language. This is really, I mean, I know you were cold on him in 93, 94, but
he rules now. He's online.
This is the Shiryu tape. I mean, this is the first of 3 singles matches we get from him. It's the weakest of the 3, and I still have it at 3.5 stars. And that is mostly off the back of what Shiryu is doing in this match. Outside of, once again, Sasuke does the one-legged kick off the top rope, and he goes hip first into the wood. It is disgusting.
Yeah. At this point, I would like to double underline, guys. It's July 21st, 1996. He is looking really rough, Sasuke, after that.
And he has his skull intact at this point.
Yes, his skull is intact at this point, unless it didn't finish rehealing from Dos Caras. He retains the IWGP Junior Heavyweight title with a second rope Fisherman Buster. This really, Shiryu's in a tank top. He's going hard, and he's online here. This is the weakest of his matches. I was 3.5 as well here. Sasuke backside. Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry to cut you off. It has the energy of one of those, like one of those Danielson or Samoa Joe Ring of Honor World Title defenses where you know the challenger's not going to win. It's more of a statement match for the challenger to get himself on that level. And that this is a leap for Shiryu. This is his best singles performance thus far. And by the end of this match, he looks like a legitimately credible challenger for Sasuke.
Yeah, and across the series and across really like this 4-week stretch, we'll see how much of a credible opponent he is. We move to Wakamatsu on the 26th for the WWA Junior Lightweight title. Hamada has held this belt essentially. Like you talked about this on the last episode, Case. This has kind of become Hamada's belt. He defends it against Menseho here, though.
This is, I have in my notes that we get Memphis Teo versus Gran Hamada in this match. The problem for me here is that I feel like we got 1/3 of a trios match. They did all the brawling to the floor that you would get for a trios match. I don't feel like they ever followed through on the payoff to all of that. It starts, I like some of the brawling. It starts off hot. I found that this match sort of petered out the longer that it went.
Yeah, the crowd brawl rule, though. The crowd brawl is so good. Like, just 2 guys just step punching and headbutting each other. Like, just the Hamada step punch is one of my favorite things. And I feel like if every Michinoku Pro had this as the crowd brawl match instead of Wilkins versus Yone Genjin, that's when I want to have every single Michinoku Pro show on the network. That's when I'm not okay. That's when I'm not okay with comp tapes and magazines, is if we were able to get like that. I really enjoyed this. I thought that the arm work from Hamada and Teo trying to fight it off was all really strong here. I was 3 3/4 on it. I just have to admit that I'm a Mince Teo guy at this point, and I'm a sucker for whenever I know that he's brawling with someone who can brawl with him. I kind of get shades of Mockland with him and Shinzaki, and it takes me to a good place.
I enjoyed Teo. I enjoy Hamada. I will enjoy more of Teo and Hamada later, but not necessarily for me in this match.
That's fair. We have the WWA middleweight title match, Piloto Suicida versus the Great Sasuke. Join in progress, clipped in. Sasuke wins with the Thunderfire Powerbomb, getting him another belt as he looks on before the J Crown tournament.
Yeah, Sasuke really killed him with that powerbomb, didn't he?
Yeah, no, it was brutal. It was nice to see Polito back, though.
I agree. I would like more of him and Crazy Boy. They've been noticeably absent.
Yeah. We get basically the end of another Central American middleweight title match between Kendo and Grand Nanawal from the 31st. It's reversal of a back body drop gets Nanawal the title here. In case we have our first edition of Michi News on the tape, as they are interviewing Johnny Saint, and he lets us all know that he really likes Masato Yakashiji.
Hey, join the club, brother.
Yeah, hell yeah. The one thing that me and Johnny Saint can agree on, like, I disagree with friendships with Mike Quackenbush, but I agree with that Masato Yakashiji is a good guy to watch wrestle.
I can't stop thinking about how Mike Quackenbush buying 10-10-96 on tape legitimately led to Johnny Saint becoming the NXT UK general manager. I've never really thought about that before, but that's what happened. Like, that's how we got here.
No, that is exactly how we got here. I mean, one of the many, many sins of Mike Quackenbush, you know.
Do you want to rank his sins? Do you want to get into those now?
We don't have the time for this show.
Number one, flying himself to Michinoku Pro.
Hey, Ian Rodden thanks him because that ended that NWA relationship for like the 8th time. We move into August case with another Central American middleweight title match. This time it's Grand Nanawal versus Shiryu. And in case this match ruled.
This match did rule.
Shiryu, 4-star match right here with Grand Nanawal. Just fantastic work from the two of them. Just going for it nonstop. Two guys having just heavy Frankensteiners, and Shiryu already picking up on Taka Michinoku's step through forearms and adding it into the situation. And Nanawa, where if you think about a period of a year, Nanawa losing every single match in the Fukuman Mask League after a hot start, and where he is now, like the crowd up for all of this here. This was the best thing I think we had so far in this episode.
I'll reserve my thoughts on Shiryu for the moment. I want to focus on Grand Nanawa for a second. 1996, it's kind of, the finals of the Mask League through now. So we have a year's worth of Nanawa where he has really upped his game. And as we went through the footage in, 94 and early 95, I was largely very unimpressed with him. I mean, he was a fall post in a heel unit, and he wasn't doing a ton that he could sink his teeth into, but he wasn't doing anything that made me think that he could perform at a higher level. And he is a guy, as we go through this 96 footage between his performance in the match with the Zebra earlier in the year, and he's a focal point of the 3/15/96 trios match, and he's got the tags with Delphin in June as he and Delphin are turning face and Kai and Tai is forming. And he also has the singles match with Delphin at one point. This is a guy that if we were going to do the SFM 50 for 1996, I mean, you've got your high-end workers, all the All Japan guys. It's a great year for Hashimoto. It's a great year for Santo. Great year for Casas. Great year for Ray Jr. Great year for Psychosis. But when you're filling out the back half of that ballot, I feel pretty comfortable saying, hey, Grand Nanawa is probably one of the 50 best wrestlers in the world in 1996. The stuff we have of him on tape is consistently awesome this year.
Yeah, he is just operating at a new level, and it keep on going back to like the fact that he's still, I think, a literal teenager.
Yeah, we talked about that in the last episode where I didn't realize he was as young as he was, but I think at this point he's maybe 20.
Yeah, which is just wild to see like this happening, and he really feels like a grown-up pro wrestler at this point. Like we've seen this guy really kind of gain his stripes with us, and in a match where like Shiryu does what it does for like the first time I've ever seen it. He runs across the apron through the turnbuckle to the tope con hello and nails it clean and heavy, and it just looks as vicious as it can get. And it's wild to see these two guys that 4 years previous could not have a match like this, that are just stealing the tape by everything they're doing.
Yeah, there's a lot to like here. I like the series where Nanawa is controlling on the mat. He hits a tiger suplex Shiryu kicks out of the pin, but Nanawa maintains control in that tiger suplex position and continues his offense from there. I really, really like that. And then there's a spot where they're both on the apron, and Shiryu ends up on the middle turnbuckle, and he does sort of a cool drop kick onto the apron. It sends Nanawa to the floor, and then Shiryu has that very signature, very unique flipping tope suicida that he does, and he does that through the turnbuckle, almost in the way that Generico used to do the tornado DDT. Is sort of that same spot, but he just does the flipping tope suicida, which looks incredible. And then he dumps Nanawa on his head with the dragon suplex for the finish. 3 3/4 for me, well worth your time.
Yep, I was 4 flat on that, and just real grown-up performance from both of the guys, and it's really just fantastic to see. And
grown up is exactly the right word. This is you nailed that. This is not a match that either of these guys would have been able to have in 94, or I think even in 95. This is a fully formed product of both men wrestling as often as they did throughout the course of 93, 94, 95, and growing into this role.
Absolutely. It's just like a wild match to end that half of the comp tape, because case it's now August 5th, 1996. One of the more famous days in all of Japanese, if not world junior heavyweight wrestling. Case is time for the J Crown finals happening at Sumo Hall during the G1 Climax tournament from 8/5/96.
Yeah, so for the sake of this podcast and just for the sake of timing, we are going to blow over the initial stages of this tournament. We are not going to talk about Sasuke versus Motegi from 8-2, Sasuke versus Samurai from 8-4, or the accompanying Ultimo Dragon matches. There's a short Ultimo versus Liger match on 8-2, and then on 8-4, again, Ultimo versus Shinjiro Otani. If you've never seen it before, it is one of the better matches of the 1990s period. Certainly one of the better junior matches of the 1990s. It is sort of the thing that, if you're listening to this, and especially if you're maybe a newer Japanese wrestling fan and you don't know Otani because he was already injured by the time that you started following, or you sort of only know Old Man Otani, which is a completely different wrestler than 1996 Shinjiro Otani was. To me, it's one of the great Otani showcases in history. There's the Liger match from early 1997. There's the 625 2000 tag match that has him and Takaiwa against Kanimoto and I believe Minoru Tanaka that I have as a 5-star match. Look, I can go on and on about Otani. We are not going to talk about any of those, but we are going to talk about the finals of the J Crown tournament, the August 5th, 1996 match between Ultimo and Sasuke. I really like the writing that Dave does when Dave is on fire in the summer of 1996. If you respect Dave, and I would hope that if you're listening to this podcast that you do, he is doing such great work, doing some long form stuff in the Observer during this time period. And so I wanted to read what he wrote about this match. This is from the August 14th, 1996 Observer, in which he writes, "The biggest match in the history of junior heavyweight wrestling, at least on the surface, took place on 8-5. Both Ultimo Dragon and Great Sasuke came out with 4 models apiece, each holding a title belt over their heads. The two themselves were an amazing story. Yoshinari Osai was a part of the New Japan Dojo, but couldn't make the grade largely because of his size. But he wanted to be a wrestler so bad that, similar to Keiichi Yamato a few years earlier, he flew to Mexico and in a foreign country knowing nothing except that it was the land of male mascaras, turned himself into a great wrestler, and returned to Japan and made a big hit. Masanori Morikawa, who came from a more upper-class background, would literally follow wrestling tours around the country as a teenager. He turned pro with a couple of his friends as an undercard green wrestler at the lucha-style promotion run by Shin Masun, where Asai had become the top draw. Morikawa first went under the name Masa Michinoku, which means Masa on the way. Current wrestler Taka Michinoku is not his brother, but a kid who grew up wanting to be the next Takada on the way. Asai became Murakami's teacher, and as often happens within a few years, the student surpassed the teacher. Doing daredevil moves that were beyond anything seen to that point in Japan, the great Sasuke started to develop a following. Murakawa started his own lucha promotion in Japan, doing the bookkeeping himself in the morning, and became the Japanese version of Smoky Mountain Wrestling, going into teeny villages at the local high school or rec center, running shows in which they ran on such a tight budget that they didn't bother to even bring in chairs. The fans would sit on the floor and watch the matches from close range. Now they're more successful. Sitting on the floor and watching Michinoku Pro has become a cult thing in the northeastern section of Japan. Nobody that goes to those shows wants to sit in chairs. It was the biggest match of their careers, but like everything else in wrestling, things don't always go as they seem. And then Dave would note that Sasuke won in 1356 with the match having a great atmosphere and between all the belts with the student versus teacher storyline. He also notes, and I thought this was very funny, that the president of TV Asahi came into the ring to present Sasuke with an award. Somehow, Dave writes, I don't think the president of NBC would do that after the main event at WrestleMania. Sasuke left amidst a celebration carrying 6 belts around his arms and wearing 2 around his waist. The show itself was one of the best of the tournament, but the post-match had a bad note. Sasuke had to be taken to the hospital. He cracked his head in 2 places, landing the flip dive while kicking off the ring post. He needed 5 stitches to close one of the cuts, but fractured his skull, apparently similar to his injury against Dos Caras. He was then allowed to leave the hospital in Tokyo the next morning, but had to check into the hospital in his hometown in northeastern Japan the next day.
Yeah. The J Crown changes Ultimo's career. Not necessarily Ultimo's career, but Sasuke's career. And I don't think we see Sasuke ever reach the same level of ability as he had going into this match.
Yeah, I've been trying to figure out when exactly the change comes for Sasuke from a physical standpoint. And I would have assumed, silly me, that it would have been the first skull fracture against Dos Caras that is the thing that really changed the trajectory of his career. And in fact, it did not. Sasuke is kind of incredible in the beginning part of 1996, and he's really good in Mexico, and he's good all the way through here. He doesn't wrestle from this match on 8/5/96 until the 10/10 These Days show at Sumo Hall. And so that month that he doesn't wrestle in September of 1996, if you want to play the cage match game of looking at, how many matches he wrestled a month, this is the first time since February of 1993 that he does not have at least one recorded match. And when you think about, how sparse the Michinoku Pro schedule is in the early part of the year, but also how many injuries this man suffered from the course of 1993 until now, that's completely insane. I mean, again, he fractures his skull against Dos Caras in August of 95, and he doesn't really stop wrestling. In 1995, he wrestles 24 matches in August of that year. He wrestles 14 in September, 15 in October, 14 in November. And this is somebody who, again, to reiterate, fractures his skull on August 25th, 1995, and then works another 14 matches the next month, and then doesn't slow down in October and doesn't slow down in November. So he's working at such an unhealthy pace, and I think this is the injury, oddly enough, not the knee injury, but it's the head that I think fully officially catches up to him here.
Yeah, and he goes into this match, I would say, like we talked about the knee brace, he's not in good shape. And he's able to really like tough it out. And I mean, he toughs out this entire match. Ultimo blows out his knee on a side moonsault to the outside. He looks like he blows out his knee actually earlier, or tweaks it earlier on a double kick that they do. But we've dealt with the fact that Ultimo does not, as soon as a Michinoku Pro name is attached to it, his game drops. And this time, I have to say the reason that it drops is not necessarily because of him. It's because the two of them are essentially falling apart during and throughout this match.
Yeah, it's just, it goes to the oddities of Ultimo against these Michinoku Pro guys, where it just lacks the polish that he would have even the night before against Otani. It would lack the polish of what Sasuke would do with guys like Liger. It's an odd fit for whatever reason. Ultimo never really seems to embrace these Michinoku Pro guys in the way that you would hope. So this feels like a match that is it's almost great by default because the stakes are so high, but it should have been so much better. This is one of those weird, disappointing 3.5-star matches.
Right, that's what I have exactly on it. The thing that gets me about the match and like the pomp that would happen in 1996, the fact that you had 8 bikini babes each coming out with a belt and doing poses, and they basically stick around Sasuke the entire rest of post match and into like his interview, and just like his giant trophy that he gets from the TV Asahi president. And it felt like, even though like their bodies were falling apart out of it, like the pomp of it. Like, it did it feel the same as the J Cup first stage in '94? No, it doesn't. But does it feel like, okay, we go from 1994, where it was Sasuke's introduction to that stage, to his feud with Liger, and then now in 1996, he is not only just the IWGP champion, he is now, as of August 5th, 1996, the unquestioned top junior heavyweight, at least in the Japanese wrestling world. And it feels like that coming out of this match, even though it all goes to hell. Sasuke, the step flip bump looks, he does not get any spring off it, probably because his knee's going bad, and it looks a lot more like Ultimo could not even catch him. Ultimo basically falls down with him, making it look like that he's power bombed right to the cement floor of Sumo Hall.
It is one of those things that if you watch this match after you listen to us talk about it, when Sasuke goes to that flip dive to the floor that he hits his head on, make sure you don't have a podcast in the background, you don't have music playing, have the volume up for that. You are going to hear Sasuke's head radiate off of Sumo Hall. It is unmistakable what that sound is when it happens.
Yeah, it's really, really kind of chilling in a way.
It really is. So Sasuke's out until October. Tiger Mask is also out injured at this point, so we really lose the backbone of Michinoku Pro Sekigun at this time. There is a note before we bounce back to these Michinoku Pro matches from the Observer on August 19th, in which Dave notes that with both Sasuke and Tiger Mask out of action with injuries, Sasuke has gotten Satoru Sayama to wrestle 2 small shows for his promotion this week. It allows Sayama to work before small crowds to test himself out and work into some condition before his stadium show on August 17th against Gran Hamada, which we will not be covering on this show, but that match does happen.
Yep, and we go back to the World Championship title series tape for an interesting independent junior heavyweight title match. Taka Michinoku defends against Shiryu. It is a rare Kai and Tai Deluxe versus Kai and Tai Deluxe match, and it works completely different than any other match that we have seen this episode.
As we sit here, I was thinking today, we're probably halfway through this project right now, and I think we're making great pace. I think by this time next year, there's a chance that we're putting the bow on this project, which is both daunting and exciting. Through all the footage we've watched so far, this match, Taka Michinoku and Shiryu, August 16th, 1996, this is the best singles match in the history of Michinoku Pro up to this point.
It is just a tremendous piece of work here. Completely different from your Saitos versus Super Dolphins. Different from Jinsei Shinzaki versus Men's Teiho. Completely different from Mascara contra Mascara, Gran Nanawa versus Golgotha Cross. This is a physical bout where no hijinks, no shenanigans, no high spots really until 15 minutes into the match. Like the first dive happens at minute 15. But what you have instead is just 2 guys really testing each other, and in a lot of ways trying to. This is what I imagine what a John Moxley versus Claudio Castagnoli match in 2026 AEW Death Rider versus Death Rider.
Excellent.
Yeah. That's what I kind of imagine this would kind of be, because they go for it. That it is stiff, it is hard, it is not like head droppy until like that. It's not like any sort of like suplexes or any sort of like bumping really for like that like first 11 minutes, and then it ramps up and it goes crazy. But after the 15-minute mark, you have Taka Michinoku doing one of the best dives I've ever seen. His twisting moonsault that he does.
Oh my God, it's gorgeous.
And then Shiryu, this is something that he does in this match case. I wonder if you picked up on this. There is a Rana cradle that Shiryu goes for in the last parts of the match, where instead of the typical Rana cradle where you grab the guy's legs and you like sit down with it, the way that he does is he goes completely flat with all of his weight on their shoulders, ignoring the legs whatsoever.
Yeah.
And I've never seen someone treat a Rana hold like that before. And that is something that if you're someone who's listening to this, who is a wrestler and does things like this, it's a different way to think about it. But if you watch him do this, you go like, you know what? That makes more sense than doing the leg cradle, because all of your body's weight is on the shoulders and it looks more like physically impressive.
It's such an artful match. We've become the broken record talking about how great Taka Michinoku is, but you get to see the full spectrum of Taka, where in 1996, this guy is obviously working full-time for Michinoku Pro. At this point, he's working full-time for FMW, defending this independent junior championship. He's also a battle arts guy at this point, and you get to see all of these different styles come through, I think specifically in this match, in a way that is just such a unique sort of one-of-one performance, where I don't know in the landscape of Japanese junior heavyweight wrestling, I mean, maybe in 2003, there's more guys that could have a match like this, but in 1996, this is sort of exclusive to Taka, and I think he brings out the best in Shiryu. I think Shiryu brings out the best in him. I did not know the result of this match, and I'm going to purposefully not say the result of this match, because the 20 count, the tease they do where they both get in the ring at 19, that got me, because these are stablemates. I figured they might just go to a double count on here. That was one of the more effective 20 count teases I've ever seen.
Yeah, and it felt earned, and it felt every moment you're like, oh God, is it going to happen? And then when they made it work, it was the most effective 20 count it could be.
It was outstanding. I thought both guys killed it here. I'm at 4.5 stars on this match.
Same.
I would have it slightly above Nanawa versus Cross from the Mask League. To this point, better than Sasuke versus Delphin, better than Delphin versus Togo. This is the best singles match in Michinoku Pro history. And it's crazy because it's not
Shiryu.
A match. It's Shiryu. It's not a match that Ditch hosted. You know, he has, from this tour, he has Nanawa versus Shiryu, and then the Liger tag that we'll get to in just a second. But it's not something that was readily made available by Ditch. It's not a match that I've seen floating out there just in like a single YouTube upload. It's a match that seemingly doesn't have a lot of lore, history, or gravitas to it, but this is the thing that has impressed me most. I mean, this is, I think, a clear step in the evolution of this style from 1993, where they're still doing this Hamada's Universal style, which is influenced by UWA Mexico, into now this thing that feels completely detached from that, not in a good or a bad way, but it's just very different. And it's very unique to Michinoku Pro.
Yeah, and it is the kind of thing that after you watch this match, you go like, okay, now you have a sense of, all right, if we ever have another Kaintai Deluxe versus Kaintai Deluxe match, now there is such a high level that we're expecting from it that it's going to be really hard for even like for someone like Dick Togo, who we've been so high on throughout the series. It's going to be near impossible to kind of top that, just because of how unique this match was and how impossible it kind of is to replicate it.
Absolutely. No, really well done by both guys. Completely worth the time. Pause this and give this match a watch if you have not seen it before.
A match you can fast forward, and to be honest, it just doesn't really take much time. You don't really have to. Is for the British Empire light heavyweight title, Battle Cat versus Masato Yakashiji. I couldn't find anything about this belt case. And to be honest, I couldn't find anything about Battle Cat. But the guy had a wild mask and energy, and he got one with a jackknife after a misdirect attack.
It was a match that existed.
And then we had El Pantera versus Nahiro Hoshikawa. This was super clipped. This was a level of yank from Hoshikawa that you get to see him just kind of throw Pantera around a little bit, but Pantera gets the win with a inside cradle after a headbutt.
I would have liked to have seen what the full version of this match would have looked like.
Yeah. The more I see Nahiro Hoshikawa, and the more that like he's kind of stepped up, like that's the one thing about getting the full shows would be getting more Hoshikawa and in spots, because he does kind of feel like a guy that gets kind of lost in with how the tapes go sometimes.
It's interesting because I feel like he's around a lot in 95 and he's not around a ton in 96.
Yeah, no, I am with you with that. After that, speaking of El Pantera, the UWF Super Welterweight title, El Pantera versus Super Dolphin. This is a super quick match. After a DDT that Dolphin puts on that goes hard, a Cobra Clutch, and El Pantera immediately taps out. He clearly, as we've discovered in Dave's reporting, broke his nose on that DDT.
And broke his nose and went home.
Yeah, but they were working this at like a super fast pace before that. Like,
well,
Dolphin clutch
again,
within 2 minutes.
It kind of goes back to the thing that we talked about the last time these two guys had a singles match is Dolphin and Pantera are positioned as career rivals. They just don't have a career-defining match. But this, in theory, in the way that these guys have been booked, should have felt like a much bigger deal, and it doesn't. And it's kind of a bummer.
No. And then we get the last full match on the tape. It is a trios match from Amori. This is Liger coming in, teaming with Gran Hamada and Gran Nanawa versus the Kaintai Deluxe team of Dick Togo making his first appearance of the episode, and the Dream Chasers of Taka Michinoku and Shonichi Funaki making his first appearance as well.
I mean, sort of an iconic match.
Just fantastic stuff. Just Kaintai Deluxe before the match, especially the Dream Chasers, just wanting to get at Liger baiting them. And it's just, look, I hate the phrase like aura farming, but like in the pre-match thing, like you felt like that these three young guys were there to tear apart Liger, and that's what they proceed to do throughout a lot of this match.
It's amazing, talking about the Ultimo stuff and just how he never really worked with the Michinoku Pro guys. And then you see just the life, not that this company, not that this promotion in 1996 needed an injection of charisma or personality or life into it, but you just see what Liger can add. And this is at a point in Liger's career where, and Dave covers this pretty extensively in The Observer, but Liger had a tumor. He was getting it removed 5 days after this show. He had just only before this show gotten the good news that the tumor wasn't cancerous, because he almost had to pull out of this show after being injured and breaking his ankle in 1994, right before he was supposed to work a Michinoku Pro show then. So this was years and years in the making. And it does, especially in the pre-match, I would say maybe more so a little bit than the actual match itself, but in the pre-match, it has the atmosphere of a match that people have now been waiting for at this point for years and years and years.
Yeah, and then outside of just Liger being like the presence and having him here for this, like you go back to stuff like Taka and Nanawa, like the two of them, like the former bottom end of Dolphin Core that are still kind of feeling out. Like we're talking still 2 months, 3 months since the Dolphin Core disintegrated and Kaintai Deluxe became the 5-man complement. So a lot of heat there between the two of them, and it's just really fun work. Liger brings it for it and at a certain way, and the fact that like Liger and it just feels so professional with him in this. Like it, as much as Onita was the seal of approval in the first few years, having Liger kind of do this match, and yes, it's without Sasuke and Tiger Mask 4, it feels like the seal of Michinoku Pro, if it was not already at this point, credentialed as a major player in Japanese wrestling and showing like the forefront of independent wrestling. Liger doing this show and this match happening is that seal of Michinoku Pro deserves to be taken seriously.
You know what's amazing though is that he did that so many times for so many different people and promotions throughout his career, because you could argue that the J Cup itself is sort of the seal of approval of junior heavyweight wrestling in Japan in a way that it needed. And I don't think it made, I would have to look. I don't know enough about Osaka Pro to say definitively one way or the other, but even if him going to Osaka Pro in 2001 and having just that incredible match where it's Delphin and Murahama against Samurai and Liger, even just that is a seal of approval for Osaka Pro. in the same way that he does this for Michinoku Pro. And then he goes to Noah and he puts the junior tag division on the map in a real way. And I'm working on something right now that for voicesofwrestling.com that won't be done for a few months. So I don't want to talk about it, but I'm very committed to working on this throughout the year. And part of that involves going back and watching a lot of Green Ring, Masawa era Pro Wrestling Noah. And oh my God, I mean, the Liger run in 2002 and 2003, you know, if you haven't revisited Kenta Fuji versus Liger and Murahama from July of 2003 in a while, carve out 25 minutes. You're not going to spend a better 25 minutes throughout the day. So he does that there, which completely reinvigorates, you know, or not reinvigorates, but it completely injects life into this Noah Junior tag division. And then he does it twice in Ring of Honor. He's got the Weekend of Thunder, which I think was maybe even more important than Muta coming in at Final Battle 2003, but Liger coming in 2004 and wrestling Danielson and having that tag match with Joe and Loki and Danielson the next night, you know, that does a lot to legitimize Ring of Honor. And then when the New Japan partnership reforms a decade later, it can't be overstated. You know, that is now we're talking about Okada and Tanahashi and Nakamura. It's that era of New Japan, but they put Adam Cole against Jushin Thunder Liger for the ROH World title on that Hammerstein show. Now, you could debate if there were more exciting matches they could have done, but they felt even in 2014 that Liger was sort of the legitimizing factor of this relationship. And I kind of think that was the right move. You know, it's a very simplistic match against Adam Cole, but it's a very effective match against Adam Cole.
Yeah, no, it's really something that, as we have been doing this project, the thing other than like, okay, like Sasuke, like looking at Sasuke's peak and how to make sense of it, like that has, I feel like for both of us, that has been one of our big bullet points throughout this. But one of the unintentional things is now here it is so clear and it is so just obvious now, just like how much I still think people underevaluate Jushin Thunder Liger.
I agree. But
and
it kind of goes back to, and I forgot we had this conversation, and I don't even remember what got us on this conversation, but somebody in the Discord over this past week, which because of the J episode and the Open the Voice Gate channel, and because of Dragon Gate's abysmal existence in 2026 and the Dragon Gate channel has been so lively, and it's been so enjoyable to read over these last few weeks. But somebody brought up that we were talking about the 90s New Japan heavyweights in one of the episodes where we covered 1995. And I don't remember why we got on the topic, but I'm sure I made the point of like, you know, New Japan is destroying their own legacy because people can't share New Japan clips. And Liger, I would say maybe other than Fujinami and Hashimoto, is the biggest victim of that, where he has such a lengthy career. There are so many different eras of his career, but the New Japan stuff you can't really talk about because it's so hard to share.
yeah, and for like Liger, especially the amount of stuff from like 91 through 97 and like talking about the peak of Japanese junior heavyweight wrestling, like it's just it's piecing together these comp tapes, and then it's also, you know, hoping that things are available elsewhere, because you just know that New Japan and how the way they operate is just not available, and you can't really share it, and it's a real bummer.
I will say for this match, it is much shorter than I remember, and it is not quite as good as I remember it being. I think going into this, I sort of assumed that this would be in the upper echelon of matches that we watched, and it's very good, but I would have it at 3 3/4. I would not call it great. It's 13 minutes. The atmosphere whenever Liger's in the ring is incredible, but it's weirdly not the match I remember it being, if that makes sense.
No. I was 3 3/4 on it. It when we look at where things are with where we rate things and how like that 4.5 stars for Taka and Shiryu, that's the first 4.5 star match for me in the promotion in a year. You know, like it's still a really top level match for this promotion at this time, and it does feel essential in its way, but it's not necessarily the it's not the end all be all that we kind of thought it was. The finish, Nanawa blocks a top rope drop kick from Michinoku. Then he hits a Michinoku driver, the Nanawa bomb to get the win there. And I think that's kind of the interesting thing is that you look at this match and you go like, oh yeah, Liger's going to come in here and, it'll be a Liger bomb 1, 2, 3, or maybe Fisherman Buster, but he's not going to go crazy with this. But no, it's Nanawa to gain the big finish here. And I thought that was kind of a pleasant surprise coming out of it.
Yeah, whole thing was a delight. I mean, you're absolutely right. This is essential Michinoku Pro viewing. This is Michinoku Pro 101. If you care about Michinoku Pro, you have to watch this match. It's just not quite as good as I remember it being.
Right. And then backstage, Liger is happy. We have some more Michi Pro news, Case, and we have to cover the fact that Kaientai Deluxe now has a 6th member as Superboy turns on Piloto Suicida to join Kaientai Deluxe.
That's what I'm talking about, baby. That is what I'm talking about. I am all about that.
Oh, God. In the way that it made sense that Johnny Valletta went from Z-Bats to Psypatra and just kind of goes with that, like, Superboy should always be assumed to be a member of the heel unit. Like, I'm glad they did the angle, and that was fun, but, like, it just felt like, okay, this feels right. You should be Menseho should be hanging out with Superboy on the outside, like that should definitely be happening. And
that should be happening. Let me read this note from the Observer really quick, and then we can talk about the remaining footage on this comp tape and how we're going to have to hunt down some of this footage. But I want to get this in here, and then we'll go out talking about the footage. But Dave writes, after all of this is from the 8/26/96 Observer. He says, the situation involving the great Sasuke is clouded in secrecy with a lot of concern because reporters have been banned from seeing him, although insiders say his condition is pretty bad, stemming from a fractured skull suffered while landing on his head on a dive during the 8-5 match in Tokyo against Ultimo Dragon, which in storyline fashion was the biggest win of his career. Apparently, although this is not confirmed, Sasuke may need some sort of brain surgery and could be out of action for a while. From a storyline standpoint, at the time of being hospitalized after the Dragon match, Sasuke held 9 different lighter weight title belts. One of them, the WWA middleweight title, was already vacated when Sasuke missed a scheduled title defense on 8/17. Dave writes that Pantera of AAA won the title, beating Hoshikawa. The other 8 belts are next scheduled for title defenses on 9/23 at Yokohama Arena against Shinjiro Otani and 10/11 in Osaka against Ultimo Dragon. The original plan was for Dragon to win all 8 belts on that show. In addition, Sasuke's company, Michinoku Pro Wrestling, had scheduled the biggest card in its history on 10/10 at Tokyo Sumo Hall, with Sasuke scheduled a headline against Dynamite Kid. At this point, his appearing on all of those dates is questionable. Jushin Thunder Liger did wrestle for Michinoku Pro on 8/18 before his operation to remove a brain tumor scheduled on 8/23. We've had it confirmed that the biopsy of the tumor was benign and the tumor was relatively small, so there is a chance he'll return from surgery to the ring as early as the New Japan September tour. WAR announced this past week the main event of its 10/11 Osaka show would be the first ever singles match between Junichiro Tenryu and Keiji Omura, who will do the Great Muda gimmick for that show. The card is also tentatively scheduled to have the Great Sasuke versus Ultimo Dragon for all 8 belts and Rey Mysterio Jr. versus Psychosis. So a few things to note here, and we'll cover more of this 2 episodes from now. Sasuke versus Otani does not happen on that 9/23 show. That ends up being a real lame duck show for Otani. He gets stuck in the opener where it's Dean Malenko and Otani against Black Tiger and El Samurai, which I'm sure was great, but it is not exactly a J Crown title challenge. Sasuke, as we've talked about, does not wrestle from 8/5 until 10/10, and then we will cover the stuff with Ultimo Dragon on a later episode.
Yeah, the fact that it was like brain surgery, the brain surgery line made me go to, and I know it's a dark joke going, I wonder how things would have worked after Sasuke gets brain surgery. How the next 3 years would have played out. Like, Sasuke gets brain surgery, and Michinoku Pro might still be kicking it wild, and it might be the number 3 promotion in the company. Who knows?
Look, I think if anybody could have possibly had their brain removed during brain surgery, it would be Great Sasuke.
Yeah, it's not Shibata.
I would believe that if they said that they left Sasuke's brain on the operating table for a while.
Yeah, no, that would make total sense. So the last parts that we get to see on this tape are from the outdoor show in Sendai. 3,500 is the announced attendance on that show. A match that we get to see parts of is for the Pro Wrestling America title. Wellington Wilkins Jr. beats the Heister for the belt. We got to see more than we needed to ever seen of that. Did not know who the Heister is. Tried to look him up, couldn't find him. But he sucked. He sucked, guys.
I have no argument from me.
Yeah. But the tape ends with Tiger Mask 4 versus Terry Boy. And we have a little bit of homework to do, Case, about this match.
Yes, we do. So the footage that we are making available to you for this episode cuts off in the middle of Tiger Mask versus Shiryu. Obviously, that on the surface is a huge issue because I think both Mike and I speak for everybody. We would like to watch Tiger Mask versus Shiryu.
It's Shiryu in an out. It's a. Why did I have it down as Terry Boy in this? But yeah, Shiryu looks. It's Tiger. Is it Tiger? Is it Terry Boy or? Yeah. I'm sorry, it's Tiger Mask. Sorry, my bad.
Min's Teo and Tiger Mask, right?
Yeah. Why were we talking about
I could have led you down the wrong path there, but it's Min's Teo versus Tiger Mask.
Yeah. It's an outdoor match with Min's Teo. Like, we want to have all of those because he has super energy when he fights outdoors.
And then it turns out that not only do the footage we have, that match cuts off halfway through, we are also entirely missing a Dick Togo versus Super Delphin match, which in all of my years of existing, I have never seen footage of a 1996 Dick Togo versus Super Delphin match. So, on the next episode of Those Days, hard to believe that we're at this point, but we will be covering almost exclusively 10-10-96 and the legacy of that show. We will have a special guest, somebody who has been on Open the Voice Gate before, but it's been a long time since they've been on Open the Voice Gate. And we are going to attempt to hunt down those two matches in full so that our special guest can talk about those matches and 10-10-96 with us.
Yeah, and I really can't wait for that. And I really hope that we're able to hunt these down, especially considering like they kept Delphin and Togo apart for like 3 months, basically. And like it, to me, this match feels like it's a major match that's not on the tape.
Oh, I would completely agree with that. I did not realize they had a singles match in 1996 until I was looking at the comp tape listing for this, and I went, hey, we didn't get that, and I would like to see that.
The opener of the show, Masato Yakashichi and Gran Hamada defeat Battle Cat and Yoshimoto Tsukamoto.
Wow.
We really have, we're going so far into Gamma's career and we have yet to see a mixtape.
That is a bummer, but most of this footage was not. I really enjoyed this era of this promotion. I really enjoyed the world title series, and I really, really enjoyed Taka Michinoku versus Shiryu.
Yeah, no, make sure you go out of your way for that. And really, if you have the time to sit down and watch both of these comp tapes through, they are some of the most fun that I feel like you will find in your wrestling week. And it's just, in a way, this project has been a door into the past, but like the more I've thought about it and I was thinking about it as I was watching it, then in case after us like talking about like the magazine kind of show, treat yourself and watch Sasuke and Tiger Mask in Mexico. Watch it all the way through. Don't fast forward through the non-wrestling parts. It is just it's something special. And I feel like that both of these tapes on the show were super special. But Case, as you laid it out, next time on episode 17, it's finally time for These Days on Those Days, and we'll be back with you on that. Anything you wanted to touch on before we got out of here, bud?
No, sir.
All right. You could follow us on social media. Open the Voice Gates on both Twitter and Blue Sky at Open Voice Gate. Case is on Twitter at _ in your case. I'm also on Twitter at Fujiheya with 2 eyes like Don Fuji. Also, there's the Voices of Wrestling Discord, as we mentioned. It's been a Dragon System adjacent side of it has been popping off as of late, both in the Dragon Gate channel and the Open the Voice Gate channel. Just to echo what Case said a little bit before, thanks for everyone for all your kind words and remarks after the Jay episode. It was a long time coming to have an episode with Jay, and I feel like that it was one of our stronger ones. But the Open the Voice Gate channel also has, whenever we do one of these episodes of Those Days and any of our historical or evergreen shows, we make sure to have all the content there whenever there's programming notes and really anything for Open the Voice Gate. The best place to go to for the information is in the Voices of Wrestling Discord in that channel. So check it out. And We will be back with you next time on Those Days to talk about the biggest show in the career and the existence of Michinoku Pro 10-10-96 these days from Sumo Hall. Take care, everyone.
Most people don't realize how much their personal information is being bought and sold every day. Data brokers are making billions, pulling details about you from public records and the internet, and then packaging and selling it, usually without your consent. That's how your information lands in the hands of scammers, spammers, even stalkers. It's why you get endless robocalls and why ads seem to follow you everywhere. That's where Aura comes in. Aura actively removes your data from broker sites and keeps it off. They also instantly alert you if your information shows up in a breach or on the dark web. But Aura goes beyond data protection. With one app, you get a VPN, antivirus, password manager, spam call protection, dark web monitoring, and even up to $5 million in identity theft insurance, all backed by 24/7 US-based fraud support. Other companies might sell just credit monitoring or just a VPN. Aura gives you all of it, together, at the same price competitors charge for just one service. Start your free trial today at aura.com/remove. Protect yourself now at aura.com/remove.
Hey everybody, my name is Jesse Collins, and I am the host of the Gentleman's Wrestling Podcast, a show right here on the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network. On the Gentleman's Wrestling Podcast, we take a deep look at individual issues and stories that are going on in the wrestling world. Each episode is about a different topic, and we take a thorough and educated look at things ranging from current booking trends to breakdowns on individual performers and angles to investigations into different fan cultures across the industry. In addition, we keep a close eye on the wrestling media, and as a professional journalist, I bring a unique perspective to how current issues in wrestling are being covered and discussed through the wrestling media. We have a revolving series of guests from across wrestling punditry joining us on each episode, and we hope that you make the choice to give us a listen on wherever you get your podcast from.